Hi there. So I wanted to share a little story in this little journey of discomfort this year. And this is a story for all of you. Um, Way back when I started teaching yoga, I started teaching something I called Imaginal yoga. It kind of happened like many things do for me, from a feeling, from a spontaneity based on something I just really begun to understand in a different way. And it turned into a really beautiful class. It just so happened that day, a couple that I knew was there and they just got engaged, and it became very special to me. But it shifts and it changes all the time. And this whole story behind it can apply to anything in your life when you're looking at discomfort. So I'm going to share it. Many of you have probably heard of this, but anytime you hear something that you think there's always something else you might be able to learn or hear differently. So maybe just sit back and hear. Hear not with your eyes, maybe close your eyes even so you're not distracted, and just hear from a different place of your being, whether it's your heart, whether it's the sound of my voice against your skin, so that you experience it differently. So the reason I called it Imaginal Yoga, because imaginal is a word that's used for the cells that caterpillars have within them, that imagine them basically into becoming a butterfly. Crazy, isn't it? They have things called imaginal cells that can imagine them into becoming a butterfly. So, how do caterpillars move from one thing to the next? From that slow moving, all consuming life crawling on the earth to that beauty of being able to stand on a flower and fly. Well, this is it. A caterpillar moves through its life, consuming. That's its all it being. It doesn't know why. It's just consuming everything in sight. It cannot get enough. It's just eating and eating. If you've seen one on a tree or in a garden, you see them, they'll just get onto a leaf and they'll eat it. They'll move on to the next. If you see a tree filled with caterpillars, you know that tree is going to have a bit of a struggle. So this caterpillar moves through life, consuming and consuming and consuming. Consider the life you're in right now. Look around you. How much of what you do or what the world around you does is about consumption, taking in, consuming not only food and resources, but consuming information, consuming entertainment, consuming even sometimes our relationships. So here's this caterpillar. It's getting heavier and fatter and slower and slower. And there's something in it that eventually just can't go any further. It doesn't think it through, it doesn't know it, it just knows that it cannot progress any farther. It has consumed so much that it is just has to stop. And as it stops, it starts to form this chrysalis, this cocoon around itself, a fairly hard casing to protect it. Again, think of where we all are in life, where the world is in this moment, maybe where you are personally. All these things that you've been bringing in, at some point, there's something in you, that discomfort of saying, oh, this just isn't serving me anymore. I've just had too much of this. And yet you don't know. You don't know how to move forward or where you're going or what to do next. So you come to a standstill almost. You just either sit in that comfort of what you know if it is comfortable. Most times, what we think is comfortable isn't, but you stay in it. You contain yourself within it. You stop moving forward and learning. You stop trying to find new experiences. And you kind of stagnate there. And we cocoon ourselves in that. So here's this caterpillar. It crawls into this cocoon, it weaves itself in, and it just stops. It hangs upside down. It's a different perspective, isn't it? Hanging upside down, changing everything and how you've seen it. Nothing looks the same. And it hangs there, tightly wound up in this cocoon. And while it's hanging there, inside something happens. This little cell pops up. This imaginal cell, this one cell. Because the caterpillar's system doesn't know what this is, it's like, hey, I don't know you. You're not part of this. I want you gone. And it goes out of its way to try and destroy this imaginal cell, this thing that wants to imagine a new possibility. And again, how often does this happen? You have a different idea of who you want to be, how you want to be, and you're like, no, that won't work. No, can't do that. Nope. No, I'm comfortable here. Or no, that's just, I'm afraid. Or everyone around you says, nah, don't step out of line. Don't be different. We want you to fit in. You've got to think like we do. You've got to do what we're doing. You've got to live life the way we have decided, the way you've been told, all those shoulds. But here's the thing is that caterpillar's system says, no, tries to destroy this imaginal cell. Something inside says, wait a minute. No way, you don't get to destroy that. We're coming to help. And another one is created, and another one. And the more the whole system of this caterpillar tries to destroy it, the more they proliferate, the more these imaginal cells say no, and they take over and they start coming up. It's those new ideas, it's those new things. That one thing tried leads to the next, leads to the next, leads to the next. That one possibility of being starts growing. Something tried becomes the next thing tried. And within the caterpillar, what that does is now take this form of the caterpillar and melt it down into this primordial soup. This thing that is no longer distinguishable as the caterpillar. It has lost its form. It has lost everything it's known of itself as caterpillars, this fuzzy, furry thing crawling along the earth. Does not exist anymore. How many times have you done that in your life? You've decided to do one thing and you liked it. Maybe you took up running and you liked it. And the more you ran, the more times you did it, the farther you went, the more your body transformed, the more your breath transformed, the more you wanted to do something else. Or maybe you started cooking, or maybe you moved to a different place. And the more you experienced or learned a language, the more you wanted to learn, the more words you added to the vocabulary, the more the experience changed you. So now here we have this caterpillar, this turned into primordial soup, that beginning, the possibility that it can now be anything because it is no longer holding on to that form of what it thought it was. And as soon as all those imaginal cells, all working for the same purpose, all seemingly the same kind of cell, realize that we can now be whatever we want to be, they do so. Each one starts to move off to its own space to be its own very unique and individual thing. One moves off to become an antenna, another off to become a foot, another the wing, another the color of the wing. All of them dispersing and yet still part of this community. And all now taking on their purpose. Yeah, think about it. How many times have you gone through change that's completely melted you down, torn apart? And sometimes those feel horrible. Do you not think that caterpillar felt kind of horrible being melted down into something unknown? We've all been through those in many, many ways, through death, through movement, through even the ending of a school cycle. And in that, think of how you changed and how many more ideas sent you off in different directions. Or maybe it was the community around you all working towards a purpose, and then you all found your own purpose within that. Artists, watch them, they're great at it. They come together to support each other, and yet they all create what it is they need to create. So now you have this thing still encased in this chrysalis, this hard encasement. And yet it's not what it was. Still in the same place, but changed. So, how does that now move forward? Takes everything inside going, wait a second. Everything's found its purpose. All the parts of me know what it is they want to do, how they want to move, how they want to act. This hand wants to be this hand. This mind wants to be this mind for the moment. And discomfort comes again. Discomfort is now it's tight within this encasement, and it can't be held because it knows it's got some new purpose, some new way of being, and it cannot be contained one anymore. One more moment in this tight space. Nobody else can break it out of that encasing. If they do, it dies. You can't come along and say, hey, let me free you now. Because if it's not ready, and if you try to force it, it dies. So it's up to you to decide. Are you uncomfortable enough now that you've had all these possibilities form themselves around you? Are you uncomfortable enough within that close space you've been existing in that you are deciding that you have formed enough in a new way to now break free? You've learned everything you needed to learn. You've gained whatever knowledge you can. You can't wait to gain more and more because you're not going to fit in that space if you keep doing that. And you now have to move. You have to take that wing like the butterfly and push into space, because that's what the butterfly does. It takes a wing and it starts to force its way out, and it cracks this chrysalis and it moves and it pushes, and eventually it frees itself. And it walks up and it sits atop whatever it's on, whether it's a flower, whether it's a branch, whatever it is. Takes a moment. Because wouldn't you go, wait a second, I'm free of that. This is a little bit interesting. I don't know what to do quite yet. And this butterfly sits there, contemplates, and then tests, moves a wing, loosens it up, moves another wing, loosens it up, feels the air, feels the feet, goes, oh, I'm no longer contained to just this. I'm no longer needing to just consume everything. I'm needing to gather the entire life-giving force of nature, pollen, That is my purpose. The thing that creates life, that offers life forward, is what I'm here for. And this butterfly opens its wings and moves its wings. And when the breeze is just right, when the air feels just right, it lifts off. That's all of us. I can't tell you how many times I've been in that chrysalis and how many times I've had to break out of it and move forward, my next iteration of butterfly. And you, is the discomfort enough now that you're ready to break out? Have you learned what you need to, or are you needing the discomfort of where you are to be contained for a bit so you can break down all those things that have held you in this other form so that you can reimagine yourself into the you were meant to be? Caterpillar's purpose is not just being a caterpillar. Caterpillar's purpose is to gather what it needs so it can eventually become this butterfly that will carry pollen from flower to flower to help things grow, for life to thrive. You have your purpose, and you might not know what it is yet, but what you do know somewhere inside of you is what it isn't. And if you feel like you are done with that thing, the learning that has carried you forward so you can be everything you can be in this next iteration, then maybe you form that cocoon. Change your perspective, hang upside down, and let the transformation start to happen. And if you're already there hanging upside down, maybe it's time. Maybe you are too constrained in that space now, and there's nothing else that needs to change in this moment. But it's time for you to break free and offer yourself that life-giving journey. It doesn't mean it's the last one, but maybe it's the one that's needed right now. This is the imaginal journey. This is the gift of discomfort. This is what nature has to teach us. And every moment, it's not just a butterfly, it's a chick in an egg. Again, you can't set it free before it's ready. It has to be ready. It has to start peeping and going, I'm too constrained, and start to break itself out of that shell, or it will suffocate. It's a seed in a pod. It needs to start at a certain point in the right conditions to set roots and to push. And it has to push through all that earth to get to the light. A baby can't stay in a uterus forever. First, it's a thought, and then it starts to be created. And then there's a time when it is too constrained and it has to move out of this warm embrace of its mother's belly into the world around to become its purpose. We are going through these changes in every moment of every day. So, my offer to you is to take some time. Maybe it's today, maybe it takes a while, but to consider all the things you've learned in life. Are you trying to learn more than you need for the moment? Have you learned enough, whether it's book learning, whether it's emotional learning, whether it's physical learning, whatever it is? Have you learned enough? You're tired enough of this way of being that you're ready to just change perspective? Or have you already started to change, but you're holding on tight to that space that is now too constraining, afraid to move into this next iteration? Look at what these possibilities might be. You don't have to decide. You don't have to know everything. Stop trying to know everything. Just feel. And then consider if it's time to start pushing out, getting through that discomfort. I know I've been talking in a previous video about force not being the thing, but sometimes we do need to put extra effort into breaking free. Because if you don't, You just kind of sit back and wait for life to happen. It's going to happen, but it'll happen around you. Have fun with it. You imaginal being you filled with those cells that are just waiting for an opportunity to be everything you were meant to be. I believe you have it in you. I know you do. It's up to you to decide when is right. Namaste.